From his insane physical talent to his immense dedication, this is why Israel Adesanya is no match for Khamzat Chimaev. A wolf is stalking the middleweight division looking for championship prey. In its sights is easy prey in the form of the last style bender. The proposed super fight isn't the classic case of style over substance. When it comes to MMA, fundamentals, mentality, and ruthlessness rule the day. Proven by one of the greatest to ever do it in recent years, Khabib, a great wrestling base along with solid striking, can cause fits for even the most talented fighters. The Nigerian phenom Israel Adesanya is a fantastic champion. But even the last style bender would fall to Khabib's fellow Chechen warrior, Khamzat Chimaev. Here's why Khamzat is that dude. What has led to Khamzat's undefeated 10-0 record in the UFC? Before going into the best aspects of the man's game point by point, let's take a look at the upbringing and mind of the man who should be making Israel wake up in cold sweats. Khamzat Chimaev was born in the war-torn landscape of Chechnya. Instead of taking the wrong path in life, the young wolf started wrestling at a young age. It was the young wolf's hunger to succeed that made him run through the competition from day one. To reach the heights he has in the UFC, willpower wasn't enough. Watching him fight shows that he's also a freak athlete, with all the physical talent to back up his intense dedication. For proof, take a look at how his striking has evolved. Khamzat Boris Chimaev made it pretty clear from the get-go that he has hands. In his first middleweight fight, Khamzat did win via submission against John Phillips in the second round. But my man didn't get touched even once before getting his mitts on his opponent. Only 10 days later, he fought Rhys McKee, who was the first unfortunate soul to feel the sting of his heavy punches. McKee found himself under Khamzat only minutes into the first round and took a beating in the ground and pound. Before the fight was called for Khamzat via TKO, again, Khamzat walked out of the cage unscathed. However, we still hadn't seen what he could do on his feet. It wasn't until he went up against Gerald Meerschaert that we saw how lethal he was. Only his third fight in the UFC, no one really had an idea of just how great Khamzat was yet. 13 seconds was all it took to put the MMA world on notice. The fight opened up with the two fighters feeling each other out. Right away, it was clear that Khamzat was in control of the middle of the ring, which gave him control of the fight. Khamzat, in trademark fashion, kept on the pressure, putting Meerschaert on the defensive. Then, out of nowhere, bam! Meerschaert went down with a vicious right. That was 3 straight fights where Khamzat didn't get hit with a single strike. While that's an amazing feat, it made it hard to get a feel for how he operated as a striker. It wasn't until his fight against Gilbert Burns, however, that we got a good look at just how good his striking was. A dominant right-hand fighter, no one knew that Khamzat had other tricks up his sleeve. That was until the first round against Burns. Again, Khamzat came out of the gates pouring on the pressure. In an orthodox stance, he took big swings, seemingly intent on knocking the Brazilian out early. But with that kind of straightforward attack, a fighter can leave themselves open for the counter. Burns thought he had his chance and stepped forward, looking for a left overhand or hook. That's when Khamzat showed the versatility of his game. He switched to a southpaw stance, which put his right foot forward, allowing him to his Burns with a hard right jab, knocking the man down to the canvas. It was a great example of what makes Khamzat's striking so dangerous. He mixes in so many different looks, creating a perfect storm of unpredictability that's hard to prepare for. Using combinations and changing levels as well as stances, he can hit an opponent at all kinds of angles. The high-pressure mentality he uses can also pin his opponents against the cage. From there, he can either keep pressuring with his strikes or perform a variety of effective takedowns. In his battle against Burns, he also showed that he can take an opponent's head and get in some knees. And one of the main reasons he didn't get hit much up until his fight against Gilbert Burns was that pressure that Khamzat is known for. The Chechen-born wolf clearly understands that the best defense is a good offense. As far as his traditional striking defense goes, however, he may need some work. His high guard almost cost him against Burns as it left him open coming in, putting on that pressure, and Israel Adesanya is more than capable of making him pay for that. With all that said, fighting on his feet isn't Khamzat's comfort zone. Most of his strikes are for one sole purpose: to set up a takedown. A highly accomplished and skilled freestyle wrestler, once he gets his hands on them, a fighter's day goes from bad to worse. What's jarring about Khamzat is how fast and strong he is. The fight against Li Jianliang was a perfect example. Khamzat shoots in so fast it's nearly impossible to defend, and then once he has his arms around you, he lowers his hips, and there's no place to go but down to the mat. If Khamzat gets the body lock in on Adesanya, it's game over. He'll manhandle him, and if that's not bad enough, once Khamzat gets you down, that's when the nightmare begins. Whether it's hooking his opponent's leg or sitting on it to keep them in place, or controlling your wrist, Khamzat looks to immobilize his opponent and then starts raining down vicious and brutal strikes from above. His ground and pound are next level. None of that even takes into account his BJJ and how lethal his submission arsenal is either. So, what does this all mean for Israel the Last Stylebender Adesanya? In short, it spells trouble for the champ. If it came down to a slugfest between the two, Adesanya would most definitely come out on top. As skilled as Khamzat can be striking, and as much as he's improved, the Last Stylebender might be the greatest striker the UFC has ever seen. With that said, the phenomenal fighter has shown one glaring weakness throughout his stellar career. Israel Adesanya struggles against seasoned wrestlers. It starts with his suspect takedown defense. In his fight against Marvin Vettori, the Italian fighter managed to take him down to the mat on several occasions, but in that fight, the slippery Adesanya was able to snake his way out and up and off the ground. It wasn't until his losing effort against Jan Blachowicz that the flaws in his wrestling were exposed. One of the better wrestlers and all-time fighters in UFC history, Michael Bisping, had this to say about Adesanya's wrestling after the loss. The fight with Jan Blachowicz, that laid out the blueprint on how to beat Israel. Well, that's not really a big revelation, is it? We all know he's a kickboxer. Take him down. Bisping went on to talk about how Blachowicz took Adesanya down in the middle of the ring instead of against the fence. By leaning on the fence, fighters can stop themselves from being taken down, while also using it to help them get up off the mat. Jan pulled Israel into the deep waters, taking him down in the middle of the octagon, making it really hard for him to wiggle free, and that's the key against Israel Adesanya that Khamzat would exploit. Ironically, the Last Stylebender's biggest problem fighting the Chechen Wolf would be their clashing styles. As a heralded kickboxer and boxer before joining the UFC, Adesanya is without a doubt one of the most dangerous strikers the MMA world has ever seen. But all the kicks and punches won't help him when Khamzat shoots in low and gets his arms wrapped around him and his hips underneath him. If or when the two clash, expect to see a mauling. Chimaev's overwhelming wrestling advantage is the reason why Israel Adesanya is no match for Khamzat.